Hello, this is a new GMP Detox session. My name is Markus Römer. Today we will talk about the WHO Technical Report Series 2019 about validation. I was reading a LinkedIn post because India does also need to follow this technical report series on validation. So we'll go through that. And we will add some India GMP, just for understanding. I found it very interesting. We start here with an US FDA website, a link from 2023. The FDA was meeting the agency of India, and India sometimes describes itself as the pharmacy to the world. That's right. If you read something like this, that more than 9 out of 10 prescriptions dispensed are generic drugs, India is a critical partner. So yes, it's the pharmacy to the world or of the world. However, I found it very interesting when I was reading that. Mr. Kalev was offering also the government of India to join, like the FDA works in its role as a founding member of the ICH, International Council for Harmonization, or they also are a member of the PICS, Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme. And it is said I offered the FDA support to India to enable their participation in both. And I think this is really required that India is joining at least the PICS. Currently, they work according to the WHO GMP regulations. WHO GMP regulations, quite very good. But, one thing are regulations. The other thing is how to do the inspections. We'll come to that later. The WHO GMP regulations, the main principles are written down in the technical report series 986. We don't go into details today into that. And there's also a technical report 1019 from January 2019, good manufacturing practices. Basically a bigger document on guidelines on validation and qualification, and it contains quite a lot, like the validation of analytical procedures, computer system validation, qualification, cleaning validation, and so on. The agency in India is called the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, CDSCO, which is part of the government of India. Their website looks a little bit different from a Western point of view. You find there different guidance documents in the section Act and Rules. You will find there also a list of all certified pharmaceutical companies in the various states of India who have a WHO GMP certified manufacturing unit. Here also with numbers and other things. And we have also here now the technical report 1019. So in total, it has 83 pages, total pages. And we just go quickly through that. So in Appendix 5 of this document, you will find the section about validation of computerized systems. You see also here in the Appendix 3, cleaning validation, Appendix 4, analytical procedure validation, Appendix 6, guidelines on qualification, and so on, and non-sterile process validation, and so on. Okay, so because the Indian GMP is referring to WHO, companies in India must get the WHO guidelines and comply with these. They are not so different from European standards and from the US FDA. In some sort, they are very similar. Again, it's more important how to have this kind of an agency and inspection system behind of that. Rules itself does not guarantee anything. There must also be someone like a police who is having control over that. Okay, so let's go to Appendix 5. You see here, there's a general section like also for validation master planning, the revalidation, qualification, process validation. So a quite very comprehensive document. I want to go today on computer system validation. We just scroll through this document. Annex 3, cleaning validation. Also here, the bracketing approach is mentioned, microbiologic sampling, rinse sampling, for example, batch placebo method is mentioned, establish acceptable limits for sure. Then appendix number 4, analytical procedure validation, and then we come to what we want to have a few today. There's also method transfer, for example, between two sites, validation of computerized systems with a glossary, supplier management. Supplier management, by the way, is pretty much copy and pasted from Annex 11 EMA. And here it's also very interesting, depending of the types of systems and typical application, like in production, PLC, DCS, SCADA systems. Also here, LIMS, laboratory instrument control systems, or business systems. I'm a little bit missing electronic quality management systems, but okay, there are different types, quite very interesting. If I have a few into the glossary, I found it also interesting, the definition of an audit trail. An audit trail is a form of metadata. I totally agree on that. That contains information associated with actions that relate to the creation, modification, or deletion of GXP records. For whatever reason, it's called GXP records, but it's okay. This is pretty close to Part 11. Because they also have the creation in it. In Europe, you only have the modification and the deletion of GXP records. I found that interesting because here in this section, regardless of its medium, including the who, what, when, and why of the action. That's the reason for change, why it was changed. This is, if I would say, the audit trail relate to creation, modification, and deletion to create. So that's the first initial entry. Then that's basically according to the European Annex 11, Part 11, sorry, not Annex 11, Part 11. So the initial entry. But what should be the why, the reason for change, or the reason for the entry for the creation? Basically, I should write then, I want to work or something like this, not for the initial entry. So that's an interesting mixture between US and Europe. I would follow the Annex 11 in this case. Okay, but it was interesting, it's a different definition. I'm not sure why the WHO is not just taking over one standard, US or PICS or the European one. European one is 99% identical with PICS. Okay, so but it does contain a good glossary. That's interesting. Good to know, especially if you would need to write a validation SOP. You can just copy and paste it from there. Supplier management, pretty similar like Annex 11, quite very good. What I find also interesting here is the user requirements, user requirement specifications. Why is it plural? User requirement specifications. Okay, why not? So should define critical data. So it's not saying critical functions, but also critical data, like critical process parameters, CPPs, CQAs, critical quality attributes. So that's very interesting. A URS should contain critical data and data lifecycle controls. What I also find very interesting is that they refer here to another good guidance of the WHO. It's a guidance on good data and records management principles. And this idea is quite very good, that you already think during the implementation of a system about your data flow or your data lifecycle controls, however you call it, and that you also have in mind all aspects of data integrity or data governance. So that is quite a very interesting part to read. Very well done. Very simple. Then we have this functional specifications. I found it also very interesting that you can combine it with the URS. I think it's very important to underline that currently. Then we have then they go a little bit back. That's interesting, to DQ, IQ, and OQ, and PQ also. And below of that, they have a link, to GAMP 5. And GAMP 5 second edition is saying you should not use any more DQ, IQ, OQ, PQ from process validation for your computer system validation. Okay, anyhow, Germany would say the child just needs a name, so they called it operational qualification. What I would find here helpful, if the WHO would have written, the OQ, or operational functional verification testing, should provide document evidence that software and hardware functions are intended over anticipated operating ranges. Maybe in brackets to write something, the execution of OQ or of system functional testing is in the responsibility of the supplier of the system. That would be interesting. I see that very often, that during computer system validation, people think they must execute the OQ, but I would say the OQ is part of the responsibility of the supplier, or you can do it together. But why not? Just to give here a highlight on that. Legacy systems, quite very interesting if they are still in place. Sometimes the definition is not very easy. And only one thing that's a nice to have, periodic review. I would have called it periodic evaluation, like in Annex 11, because sometimes people get it mixed up here with periodic product quality reviews and annual product reviews. So I would downsize that and rename it to periodic evaluation. It's just maybe a little bit easier. Okay, so this is quite very well. Then it goes on with guidelines on qualification and other things, like here also factory acceptance tests and site acceptance testing and so on. Quite very interesting. Well done. So saying that in India, this technical report series 1019 should be applied. And I started with the announcement of the US FDA to India to join the PICS and or the ICH. I think PICS would be great. And the PICS is also supporting national agencies in doing inspections. Warning letters issued by the US FDA. Quite very interesting things are in there. And if I read something like this, our investigators observed plastic bags filled with torn and discarded original CGMP documents in your quality control scrap area under a stairwell in your general parental scrap room and on a truck outside of your facility. Okay, irrespective, it's WHO GMP, PICS GMP, European GMP, or US FDA CGMP. This is not acceptable in any way. And if I read something like this, I ask myself, how did this company get a GMP certificate by the national competent authority? Because it seems to me that there was never seriously an inspector or investigator on site, because, you know, these things, even the worst auditor can find something like that, talking to the people, analysts destroyed CGMP records by pouring acetic acid, okay, a lot of innovation, in a trash bin containing analytic balance slips for testing the standardization of product, whatever, ABC. I'm not sure if it's just appropriate to say we follow WHO, GMP, and so on. Okay. Sometimes I also think the poor investigators from the US FDA, you know, well-educated people, and then they must see something like this. I think I would need a beer in the evening to digest that. Okay. Another one, so it's not happening only once or twice per year. That's happening very often here. Another company in India. You failed to prepare batch production and control records with complete information relating to the production and control of each batch of drug product produced. For example, batch production records were found torn in plastic bags on your rooftop, blah, 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 blah. So, okay. So why I think India should join the PICS and to implement a proper GMP system also on a national level, so that foreign agencies must not write such warning letters or notice of concerns or something like this. But to be fair, you know, if companies, you should ask yourself if you want in such an area and if it's possible to do so. There are absolutely fantastic ones, but I'm not sure if companies like these are massively also having an impact on the reputation of the rest. So it should be protected like that. So why is it the pharmacy of the world? Let's also have a view on the corruption index. So we talk about a region which is on rank 93 of 180. The score changed, is even getting worse. So it's below the global average. So the leader of the pharmaceutical production is below the global average in the corruption index. And again, I must ask myself, if I read such warning letters, how the national competent authority was issuing a GMP certificate. Have they ever been on site? The other thing is why we do production there is just cost. And this is also something that was coming up this week about some CEOs were talking about a 90-hour week for employees. It's not allowed in India. It's also, I would say, against the human rights of the United Nations. But, you know, you will find something, discussions like this, and I don't know how many, and they should be concentrated during the work. So, but how people are treated maybe are not the best, but it's lowering massively the costs. The leader, I don't know, does do a lot of hate speech. And I don't know if that is really a good way in doing to develop an economy. It's a part of collaboration, which is declined basically. So I think that's also what they do with the Muslims is not correct. Okay. Another thing is, what you should also consider is environmental protection. And if you had a chance to do audits in this region, you should be also aware of that. So lowering the costs with an insufficient cost baseline and compliance baseline provided by a system which is not working. Doesn't matter which GMP regulations you want to follow, if they are not inspected in a serious way. But the environmental part is also very important. And this is really, if you look on these pictures, these are real pictures. These are not pictures made by an AI or something like this. So we just go here, go to the summary of this document. It's from 2016, but it's still valid, including extreme contamination of waterways and agricultural lands, as is exploded at length in this report. People living in the vacancy of dirty pharmaceutical manufacturing sites, who are often poor, are those health system at most immediate risk from the toxic effluents and API-laden waste being disposed in their rivers, lakes, groundwater, and fields. However, because of the way in which antibiotic manufacturing, especially antibiotic manufacturing, discharges trigger resistance in bacteria present in the environment, spreading to human pathogens, which then travel the world. So multi-resistant things are created there. So this is really an alert, and there's a lot to do, not only to join the PICS or something like this. I think there's much more to do. So, and even the human rights in India, if you read the report of Amnesty International, that's really a little bit frustrating. In November, the air quality index in Delhi was hit 500, which is 100 times the limit deemed to be healthy by the WHO. And we produce our pharmaceutical products there. Okay, so that was a little bit more than just the WHO regulations. It's more about the things that we must do and to think about that. So I hope that was well understood, and thank you so much. Bye bye.